Our next speaker is Jim Karygiannis, who will tell us where Scarborough Agincourt is. Jim, look forward to your talk.
For those of you that have been to Canada and visited Toronto and visited some churches, there is a church that there is a Cypriot priest, Father Philip Friedel, and that's at the bottom of Scarborough Agincourt. And if you go north, there's a church of St. Nicholas, and that is probably one of the best iconography church in Canada. I'd like to think it's in my riding. So that's where Scarborough Agincourt is. It has a population of 120,000 people. 45% of those people are Chinese. I have about maybe 2,900 Greeks, but the Chinese are the ones that mostly vote for me. We have single seats in Canada, and it's first past the post. I got involved in NGO work. I got involved in, what's the word? Storming the bastions a long time ago. One of ours that's taking pictures has pictures of me in 1989 when we stormed the bastions. Then it was March of Morphin, and I've gotten involved with you a long, long time. But never mind about me. I want to talk to you about my mom. My mother is 83. She's going to be 84 next year. She suffers from vertigo, and she loses balance. My dad just passed away, and I wanted to tell my mom where she's from. Και της λέω, μα, φέτος θα πάμε στην Κωνσταντινούπολη. She's from Asia Minor. We don't know my grandfather where he was from, but I do know about my grandmother, this is on my mother's side, that ήταν Εμμανουηλίδης, από την τραπεζούτα από το Βότο, γιατρός με 11 παιδιά. Και ήρθαν στην Ελλάδα από τη Σμύρνη το 1922, όταν κάφτηκε η Σμύρνη 9 με 12 September 1922. So I said, Mom, we're going to go to Turkey. And automatically there was a smile on her face. The vertigo was gone, the labyrinth was gone, and she says, από εκεί είναι η δική μου. I was floored. I was devastated. And tears jumped to my eyes. And I said, Mom, no, they were not from Κωνσταντινούπολη, αλλά από εκεί είναι οι ρίζες μας. Από εκεί είναι από εκεί που ξεκινήσαμε. Και μου λέει, μα πώς θα πάμε? Σου λέω, θα πούμε στα αεροπλάνο, θα πάμε, θα είμαι και εγώ μαζί σου, θα έρθει και η γυναίκα μου, θα έρθει και μια τσιγκόνη σου, να σου κρατήσουμε συντροφιά, ώστε να δεις την Αγία Σοφιά. And then unfortunately, the incidents happened in Taksim Square. And I said, Mom, I don't think we're going to go this year. She looks at me and she says, why not? I said, well, look what's happening on TV. And although I'd really love to take you, Mom, I can't chance that demonstrations will happen because I won't be able to move you quickly and get you out of harm's way. So that is my mother's side of history. My dad comes from a family, for those of you that know the song, Papalabou την αυλή, that was my family. And Agas at Tripoli asked for Papalabou την κόρη για να την πάει στο χαρέμι, του λέει ο παπάς, κάτσε να εκεί να ξεκουραστείς, θα την ετοιμάσουμε την κόρη μου να την πάει στο χαρέμι. Παίρνει την τσάπα ο παπάς, του ρίχνει μια στο δόξα πατρί, από εκεί πάει ο Αγάς, και μετά φεύγει ο Παπαλάβρος και φεύγει από το Αθήνιον της Τρυπόλεως, της Αρκαδίας και κατεβαίνει στη Μεγαλόπολη. Αλλάζει το όνομα στη Ζέρβας. Τον βρίσκουνε, τον κυνηγάνε, φεύγει από εκεί γιατί της φάρεσε, η φάρα το σώει ολόκληρη και πήγανε πάνω στο Ρωμήρι. Και το Ρωμήρι σήμερα έχει two people living there. Goat herders, ship herders. And nobody else lives there. But το Κονάκι, Papalabou still lives there. So, inside me is the debate. Am I a Hellene with pride, history, the freedom of Greece and everything to work, or am I a a Pontian or Karygiannis that fights for what happened in Asia Minor and the recognition of the Pontian genocide, the Greek destruction, the Armenian destruction, and things on that go on to today. I was invited by the Kurds to go to the elections that happened 2 years ago in Turkey. And I went to Van, Diyarbakir, and this is where the Kurds live. These are the roots of where it started, the PKK movement, and the whole 9 yards. And the rule says that you can vote from the morning until 5 o'clock, but there will be no police officers with guns in the within 100 meters of a voting station. And yet there was evidence that there was police officers in there. I took pictures, and we were going from town to town. We were stopped by a roadblock, and I said, well, you know what? If you want to arrest me, do advise the Consul General of Canada or the embassy before you arrest me. But my advocacy work goes back to Cyprus. When I went with you, Love for Cyprus, back about, I think it was 2002 for the first time, 2003. We tried to cross the Green Line, and that time was through the Palace, the hotel, and I got to the other side, and I think it was a member of parliament, I can't remember his name, big fellow, heavy set, red hair, that they asked me where I was from, and they checked my passport, and I said, I'm Canadian of Greek descent, and I said, I'm sorry, we can't let you up, and they didn't allow me to cross. And he stepped up and says, if you're not going to cross, I'm not going to cross with you. That continued for a number of years, and finally we did cross, and we went to a couple of churches, and we've seen that they were turned from churches into mosques, and I cannot forget a friend of mine that was one of you when we walked in there and λέει, εγώ ήρθα μέσα ταξιπόλητος, βαφτίστηκα και βγήκα έξω με παπούτσα. Να μπω μέσα ξανά ξυπόλυτος και του λέω, μη μιλάς τώρα, θα φάμε ξύλο, βγάλτε, πάμε μέσα, να βάλουμε κάτι για να δεις την εκκλησία και μετά να σκοτεινά να φύγουμε. So the interest triggered me to the point that I said, okay, what are the next steps? And the next steps come from the Armenians. I'm jumping back and forth because I want to tie this thing together. The Armenian community approached me for some of the work that was done in the Nagorno-Karabakh, the Artsakh area. This is the enclave within the Azerbaijan. And there are kachkars. These are crosses at the old cemeteries. They were being destroyed. And through Sweden, a couple of members of parliament, they invited us to go and speak at that time to the UNESCO. It was before Irina Bukova was a man, and I think he was, I can't remember his name, we went to speak, and we challenged him. He says, well, no, there's nothing we can do, and he started going, well, the Armenians doing this, and the Azeris said, whoa, we're not Armenians, we're not Azeris. We're members of parliament that are interested in preserving the cultural heritage of a people. So we triggered on that maybe we could do this for Cyprus. And I visited Cyprus a couple of years ago. We went to the north. I took some pictures, and unfortunately what was happening, the camera broke, and I ended up having to take pictures with my BlackBerry, which I loaded up, and then I got some more pictures. So some of the pictures that you see at the cultural instruction, CyprusCulturalInstruction.com are very blurry, but because, it was raining, camera broke, and we had to do the best. And we figured that, you know what, let's challenge. Let's storm the bastions. Let's challenge. Let's make sure that Irina Bukova, as well as the officials of UNESCO, do realize that there's people out there, not only Hellenes, not only Cypriots, but people throughout the world that are interested about culture and cultural destruction of a people, of a nation. Because when you have an invading force like Turkey, there's nothing else. They're not there to provide protection. There's 40,000 troops in the north part. My number could be off. But we have 40,000 troops in Afghanistan providing protection and trying to rebuild Afghanistan. So where do 40,000 troops of Turkey What protection are they providing? For whom? Against what? So we decided that we're going to push the buttons and try to see what we can do. We put up a website. It was translated into about 7 or 8 languages. We got some good pictures. We got some input from some experts. And we sent out the first email. And they started coming in. And the emails started coming in. And they started coming in. It was to a point where we said, okay, we got enough emails now, 45, 50,000. Now we got to take the next step. We got to deliver these to UNESCO. And at that point in time, we put another call out. We said, folks, we're out to go to UNESCO, and we need your help. But you can't go as an individual, because it's like Don Quixote fighting the windmills. So I got behind me WHIA. That's the World Hellenic Interparliamentary Associations. There's 226,000 Hellenes elected abroad. 226. You see the power that we have as Hellenes. And I use the term as Hellenes because the Greek Cypriot, to me, is a Hellene. I'm a Hellene. We were born Hellenes. So, I was part of the executive. We talked about it in Athens, and I said, and I invited some of them, I said, look, we, as part of the executives, one, have to endorse it, and two or three of us have to go to UNESCO in order to deliver a petition. So the petition was printed, all the names, the emails, 2 big boxes, and I and Yorgos Chatzimarkakis, that is an MEP from Germany, and he was close, we decided that we were going to meet a particular day and go and give a petition. So we went, we met, gave the petition. And they looked at me and said, fantastic, thank you for bringing us the petition. I said, okay, now you've got to respond. He says, well, you know what, it's not up to us, it's up to the UN. And I figured, okay, you, blank. Why are you fooling around with the culture? Why are you fooling around with people? Next steps. What do we do next? Well, the next step is that we have to take on UNESCO. And UNESCO is an organization which some people say is defunct. If somebody pushes the button, we'll send troops into Afghanistan. If somebody pushes the buttons, we'll do things. But UNESCO as an organization has absolutely hardly any power. UNESCO as an organization is letting people in Syria get killed on an everyday basis. UNESCO or the UN as an organization doesn't do much. It doesn't protect people, and although it has R2P, the right to protect. R2P was something that the Canadians brought forward at UNESCO, but unfortunately it's picked upon and chosen upon. And its powers that they have alternative motives that are being used. I mean, do we remember when the Afghanistan war happened? Which is going to bring a pipeline from Kazakhstan right down to Karachi. Do we remember what's happening in Iraq? Well, of course, in Iraq it was, it was power. There was no MEDs or, I think I used the word correctly. I think it's called... WMDs. Sorry, what was it again? WMDs. Mass destruction war, whatever. Thank you. So, you know what? Somebody's pushing UNESCO acts. But there's another 2 organizations that we have to use. It's the G8 and the G20. Canada, United States, Italy, France, Germany, Russia, and a couple of other countries are part of the G8. But Turkey is not part of the G8. However, Turkey is part of the G20. And we got to instill on our politicians and everybody that is there that if you want to do business with us, part of the G8 or the G20, you must have 3 fundamental things. 1, freedom of religion. 2, respect of human rights. And 3, freedom of the press. Well, you look at those 3 things, what is happening in Turkey today, clearly that is not being respected. So, through our respective countries, be it the UK, be it Canada, be it the United States, we need to make sure that we push the politicians to adhere to that. But that's politics. However, I want to talk to you about the power of people. The power that you have. Some of you, or most of you, or all of you, have signed the petition. And some of you, or most of you, or all of you, received an announcement either through Love for Cyprus, or I sent you something that says, I'm going to be here tonight to talk. And I gave the details, and a lot of people wrote back and says, we're going to move this email on to our people in Britain and advise them to come, or send us a copy of what you spoke about. So, the power of social media, be it Facebook, be it Google, be it internet, be it Twitter, that is very powerful, and it can move things. It said that that power of social media moved the Arab Spring, although in some cases right now in Egypt is deep winter, what is happening in the Coptic community. So what can we do to make a difference? I don't care if it's one church, if it's collective churches, or the work that you're doing, madam, and that is to be congratulated. The power that you have is create a petition, send an email, send a fax, make a phone call. It doesn't take more than 3 seconds to go on a site, bang, 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 and automatically you go. And we then make sure that your emails are transmitted. But I also want to advise you that the fight of Hellenism, the fight of Christianity, the fight of human rights, the fight of the press does not stop in this room, does not stop in these compounds. It is not only for the occupied part of Cyprus. It is not only for cultural heritage destruction of Cyprus. But it goes a little bit farther, more than that. So, as part of the Delta Sigma of World Atlantic Interparliamentary Association, SPADE, we adopted one small community, Mozambique. There is the metropolitan is Mozambique, Τροπολίτης Ιωάννης. Και όταν στη Μοζαμβίκη είχαν γίνει δικτατορία, όλα τα θρησκευτικά το κράτος decomfiscated. They returned everything to everybody except the metropolitan Ioanni. They returned the church, they did not return Athenian. So, our next challenge is to go to Mozambique as part of World Hellenic Interparliamentary Association. Some of us will either get some money or some funding, but we will go. And 226 Hellenes elected abroad will speak united or speak as one voice or a lot of voices. Now imagine this. We see the president of Mozambique or the minister and say, we think that this should be returned back. And in 226 individuals then visit the Mozambique High Commission or Embassy and say, we agree the message that was given to your president. We want that returned back. These are Hellenes elected in different parliaments, in different states, and in different countries. And then we pass resolutions. And then we have the power of the press, and we have the power of social media. So that has taught me a lesson that social media and Hellenism, the 10 million Hellenes that live outside Hellas and Cyprus, you'd be surprised the power that we have. Don't expect the consul generals to come and say, we're going to give you some money to do this work. Don't accept the church to come and say, we're going to give you money. No. Accept yourselves. Either to put your hand in your pocket or to use whatever tools you have to move mountains. Folks, we have the power, we have the capacity, we have the means. There's 226 Hellenes elected abroad. There is friends of Hellenes elected abroad. There is single seats or constituencies that are vulnerable because there's a lot of Greeks that live there. if we don't harness that power, and if we don't use it, at the end of the day, we Hellenes have failed. And I don't think Hellenes know how to fail. And I'll close with one example. A colleague of mine from the same party got up a couple of years or so and says, oh, like Greece. I approached him and said, you know how many Greeks live in your riding? About 4,000. You just won the election by 2,000. I hope you want to get re-elected again. So, he got the message, all right, and now he's the best voice when it comes to setting this. So, don't fool around with the Greeks. We might not have the power that the Jewish lobby has because they control the press. But when it comes to the Greeks, when it comes to the Armenians, when it comes to the Kurds, and I'm using these three communities because we should also make inroads with our community. You'd be surprised that Cyprus cultural instruction got 4,000 Armenian names and 3,000 Kurdish names. You'd be surprised how many people signed on. Because when we as a community rise, when we as a community abroad use what we have, when we as a community join other communities, it's a tidal wave. It's a tsunami. And when we approach the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon or whoever is supposed to be replacing him, and rumors that the Canadians will be replacing him, which is a good friend of mine, and I go walk in and I said, I got 120,000 signatures. What's your email? Because their emails are structured in such a way that everybody can, if you look at him, his last name, dot, first name, or some variation of that, and their BlackBerry goes off. And it's bang, 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 one email after another. Do you think they won't listen? Certainly they will listen. So folks, we have the power. We know how to use it. And I want to thank you for inviting me here tonight, because I want to tell you that we just started. God help the SOG, the son of a gun. You know what I'm God bless you. One of the things that I really want to do is thank my mother, Sinagasofyasti Boli, before she dies. My wish is that it's a functioning church, but it is a museum, and maybe in that would be something consolation to her seeing them. Σας ευχαριστώ. Καλό βράδυ.
Thank you very much, Jim. And Jim, thank you very, very much for reminding us that we should be working more closely with other groups such as the Kurds and the Armenians. In fact, about 2 years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we had in this room a seminar with representatives from Kurdish and Armenian organisations. And surprise, surprise, that prompted many of the Turkish organisations to turn up and to try to disrupt the meeting. And that particular meeting was very widely reported in the Turkish press. And so I think you're right, if we are to get noticed, to get our message across, what we need to do is to have more events with these organisations.